All right, we're back. The round is finally over, and players are getting ready for round 3. And we're going to try out our new in event player history. So we have our chosen for round 3. We have Edgar Magalhães. I'm sorry, Anuraag, say it.
Magalhães is the best that I can do. As certainly one of the more interesting last names that I've seen.
Yeah. So you can see here, he's playing Temur Delver in Legacy, Esper Unearth in Modern, and he's currently 2-0 in the event, having actually not dropped a game yet, having swept Elves and the Mono Blue combo deck. And he's going to be playing against Matti Kuisma this round. Matti has actually lost 2 games. He's playing Snowco in both formats, 4-color Snowco here, and Temur Snow in Modern, and he has beaten Jund combo and Elves. So I don't have a ton of experience with the 4-color Snow decks, and I feel like beating Elves is maybe game 1 you're probably disadvantaged against Elves. Is that fair to say?
I mean, so lucky for you, I got a little bit of experience in this department. If I was playing 4-color Snow, Elves is not a matchup that I'm excited to play against. Sure. I think game 1 is kind of tricky because, they just have so many cards that matter in the matchup, right? Natural Order, Green Sun Zenith, and even more recently, Allosaurus Shepherd. But I think post-board, you get tools like Plague Engineer, which, can shift the matchup a lot.
Yeah. I would be afraid of Elves, I feel like is probably facing a lot of Plague Engineers and a lot of sideboards, and maybe having some issues there. But in game 1, certainly Elves have the edge. Anyway, the Elves deck did lose to the 4-color Snow deck, and that is our match for this round. Do we have deck lists ready? If we do, go ahead and bring them up. Okay, it's going to take a moment. But we have Edgar Magalhães, who I believe came in second in the Players' Championship last year over at Star City Games, which is a fine achievement. I do not have experience doing that, but also has had success really in every circuit he's played in. A really strong player.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to the Legacy, Edgar is very, very talented. And, I mean, playing one of the best decks in the form of Temur Delver is a great way to leverage that talent. We see the stock archetype of Delver Secrets plus cheap disruption in the form of like Daze, Bolt, things like that. You pair it up with some of the best cards in the format like Dreadhorde Arcanist and Oka Thief of Crowns, and you have this recipe for success.
Mm-hmm. And we have something that's near and dear to me, main deck Pyroblast. Shows up here as a single copy in the deck list. We do have a basic land also, which may be notable. Let's go ahead and check out Edgar's opponent, Matti Kuisma with 4-color Snowco. Okay, so the basic land, not likely to matter in game 1, or maybe in game 1, but we see here defensive creatures, Icefang Quaddle, solid against Rogue Delver. We have Oko, Uro, and then a couple sweepers, Dead of Winter, which if it can get big enough, can clear the board, but small Dead of Winters, may not do enough.
Yeah, for sure. Here, I like the synergy between Dead of Winter and Icefang Coatl.
Yeah.
Get powered up by your Arkham's Astrolabes as well. This all in all looks like a pretty stock list to me, as I would say that the one of Hull Breacher is pretty spicy in the list, and then in the sideboard you got a couple tools here. Very like general. Oh wow, more Hull Breachers in the sideboard. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting list here. How do you feel about the matchup? What's your gut call?
I mean, if I'm playing an aggro creature deck, I'm really not hoping to see Icefang Quaddles on the other side of the board. So with a mixture of removal plus the Quaddles, I would like to sit on the Snowco side of things, but Edgar Magalhães brings a lot more to the table than the average Rogue Delver player. So we'll see how things play out here. How do you feel about that? Am I? You think I'm right on being on the Snow side, or would you rather be on the Rogue Delver side?
I think it's actually a much closer matchup, so it's really hard for me to say like out of the bat who would win. It really depends on what cards we see coming from both sides. Like you mentioned, Icefang Coatl is definitely going to be one of those critical cards here. I think Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, will also definitely dictate the pace of or the result of this match. Especially as we move into post-board games, we'll see. Edgar probably bring an interaction for that. From the other side, though, I think Dreadhorde Arcanist is maybe the scariest card here. And if Dreadhorde Arcanist can untap and, draw a couple extra cards, then, that's going to make a big difference. And then Also, one card that I didn't really talk about is the addition of Young Pyromancer. I think that card will also be phenomenal in this matchup.
Sure. So, and we now have we can talk about this a little bit later on, but we do have the Legacy metagame in our event now, courtesy of MTG Melee, and these are the most represented decks. 4-color Snoko with 14 players and Temur Delver with 13 players. So
Wow.
these are the decks that the field is playing against today.
Interesting. So looking at the 7 that we have here from Edgar, 4 lands and then Preordain, a Bolt, and a Brainstorm. And honestly, I think this hand is definitely a keep here. You know the matchup. You know it's going to go long. So having all this selection is pretty good here. You're clearly missing one critical component, which is a threat, a way to apply pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that just given that this matchup will probably go to turn 10 plus, you're going to have enough time to find your threats and make them hit hard.
Right. And preordaining to Arcanist is a great start. And before Edgar had to make his decision, he was aware that Matti was taking a mulligan. So, yeah, keeping here seems totally reasonable. And, this hand is not fast, but it is it's going to shape up well over time.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting also observation, which is that despite it not being fast, it is still good, which is sort of kind of a nod to how these Temur Delver decks have transitioned much further away from tempo like they historically have been, with really fast aggressive starts leveraging Stifle and Nimble Mongoose. And now today, there are more slower, quote, like mid-rangey strategies that try to, stick on the board a little bit longer, draw more cards with Dreadhorde Arcanist. They're just a little bit more value oriented, right? They really focus on like having threats that are economically efficient and good and powerful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Matti taking his time there before the second land drop. Then it does show up in the form of a Tundra. No wastelands around to potentially punish a land light draw. And let's see what Edgar chooses to do here. Draws another cantrip.
Okay, yeah. And this is a pretty good line here. Just deploy your zombie wizard, buy back your Preordain, and maybe the turn after a Brainstorm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this Arcanist, and there is no protection for it. This Arcanist dies. Edgar has a bunch of cantrips in hand, but, not really anything going on. And we do see a Quaddle here, which is not going to have Death Touch anytime soon. It's easy to kind of default mentally. I do this where, Quaddle is a Death Touch creature, but, it does require 3 other snow permanents. And, with 0 currently on the board, this is just a 1/1 flyer for now.
Yeah, for sure here. And this is a really interesting decision here, right? We're pondering and we're tapping the Tundra. So to me, immediately, I'm thinking that if we're looking for answers for this Dreadhorde Arcanist, it's probably going to be of the black-green variety in the form of something like Abrupt Decay. Dreadhorde Arcanist, Joe, I think is one of the threats in this matchup that is going to be so powerful if it goes unchecked. It's just going to be able to draw so many cards, find so many, interactive pieces in the form of like Force of Will, crazy threats like Young Pyromancer, that if I'm in Matti's side right now, I would definitely want to make sure that Edgar does not get to tap this Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Right. No, this is a card that's just a nightmare to play against. And the Swamp does show up, so Abrupt Decay is online. Is it there?
Okay.
It is. Okay. And it kind of needed to be for Matti to be, to avoid getting buried in this game. And now with this gone, I mean, yeah, Edgar's got a lot of cantrips. The Force Negation is a nice protection against an Oko that may show up, but okay. Well, now Edgar's got the business. He's got his choice of threats, although I expect we'll just see the Arcanist come down.
Yeah, this was actually a really, really good brainstorm. On top of the Force of Negation that we drew for turn, now Edgar's got 2 pieces of interaction on the stack with the Daze and the Force of Negation. Daze looking really good here with, Matti tapped out, going to be unable to pay for the Daze. I would probably put back the Tropical Island and the Lightning Bolt. Maybe this is what Edgar is deciding on. It's kind of tricky because Lightning Bolt is going to be good against the Icewind Quaddle. There is 1 snow permanent in play, so we're getting closer to Icewind Quaddle being a good blocker. But for now, stick to the plan.
Mhm.
Here's another planeswalker creature.
Right. Yeah. So we had for a while there we had the kind of the creature planeswalker, which was Deathrite Shaman, and now Fedor Arcanist kind of also playing that role. Another one power creature that is a big nuisance and just generates so much value over time. So this game now is about Matti being able to kill Arcanist. I mean, trading 1 damage for 1 damage with Quaddle, Matti just won't be able to keep up card-wise if this Arcanist stays on the board.
Yeah. And I mean, when we looked at Matty's list originally, we saw many, many copies of Swords to Plowshares, many, many copies of Abrupt Decay. So it's not necessarily the case that, Matty doesn't have another removal spell here, but certainly want to figure out how we're going to sequence to make sure that this Dreadhorde Arcanist doesn't get any free shots in.
Yeah. Even, I guess, Snowland plus Dead of Winter would also work.
Yeah.
But it's something. Or Oko. Oko to alkify the Arcanist. I would much rather take 3 damage than take 1 damage and my opponent get a free spell. And Matti giving this some time. Matti fairly deliberate in all of his decisions so far.
Yeah, I think one thing to be very conscious about too is that the way Edgar's hand is shaping up as well, there are now multiple copies of counter magic. So again, Force Negation and Daze are going to be pretty good. In this exact situation here, Daze is still a reasonably playable card as we're going to see Oko come down. This is what you were mentioning, right? We take that trade where we turn that 1/3 into a 3/3, but remove all text from it. And I also like this. Play the land first. We have mana to pay for Daze and hopefully push through.
So, assuming the Force of Negation is getting past here, what do you expect Edgar to throw away for the additional cost?
Well, my gut reaction is to either get rid of the Delver or the Daze. The Preordain seems pretty good. Yeah, and look at this. Edgar doesn't hesitate to get rid of the Delver of Secrets. The thought process behind this is that Delver of Secrets isn't really what this matchup is about. There are certain times where it is correct to keep something like a threat that can close the game quickly, but this game is going to go long. Your opponent has a lot of removal. You just want to draw cards and have selection and make sure that everything goes smoothly. Delver doesn't commit to that. The other cards do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Arcanist will be able to swing in here for just 1 damage. But 1 damage plus a Ponder makes for a pretty good attack step, or a Preordain even.
Okay.
And like you're saying, yeah, just accumulate another free counterspell. And the 2-for-1 on the Force of Negation is heavily mitigated by just picking up an extra card on the Arcanist. And we may see the same thing happen again next turn.
Yep. And the important note here is that, yes, you are trading down on cards, but then you're recouping the cards. So basically you're even. What is importantly passing is time, right? And with time, you're getting bits and pieces of damage in. And that might be the ultimate plan here as we find... Oh, wow. And this is a sweet play here by Edgar.
Yeah, so Dead of Winter to kill the Quaddle, but the fetch will turn the Dead of Winter back on to be able to kill the Arcanist. So Edgar will have to expend his force here, and I think he doesn't have a choice, really, as he can't give up both creatures to this one card. And Matti with 2 cards left in hand, seems somewhat unlikely that it's going to be a force back because otherwise the Oko would have been protected maybe. But here we see Force pitching the Preordain. Here I'm a little surprised because I don't know how likely this Daze is to matter at this point.
Yeah, I think this is Edgar saying, I really understand what this matchup is about. I think Dreadhorde Arcanist is the most important card. And if my opponent does have another Icefang Quaddle, I don't want to, lose to that. So this is an interesting follow through here as Edgar's going to find a copy of Wasteland and Force of Will on top of the deck here with that Ponder.
Yeah, and if you're a Modern player tuning in early to watch the Legacy coverage, you can see how this just, in Modern, Dreadhorde Arcanist is, when you see it, it's flashing back, bolts or discard spells, and here it's flashing back cantrips, and it's just brutal.
Yeah, and look at this. Edgar read his opponent like a book, and has that Daze for the Ice Fang Coatl, insanely rewarded for understanding, like the importance of Dreadhorde Arcanist in this matchup, and bang, now we're going to start cutting our opponent off colors with this Wasteland.
Yeah, and this is, Matti really in the back foot now. Uro, that's great and all. That doesn't, currently the mana doesn't exist to bring it back next turn, although it's not too far away. Now it does. If there is a Swords of Plowshares or an Abrupt Decay here from Matti to wipe out this Arcanist, he's still completely in this game, maybe even ahead. But with this getting another swing in, this is just getting rough.
Yeah, if there's one card that can bring Matti back into this game, it is definitely Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. Now, this card basically does it all in this matchup, right? It draws cards, it gains life, and it's a big body that can close the game here. So we're going to see Edgar brainstorm and keep as much stack-based interaction that he can to sort of keep this Titan at bay, because if the Titan goes unchecked, it's going to be very hard for Edgar to win. Mm-hmm. So I definitely like, giving this card the respect that it deserves.
Yeah, this is going to be a near thing. If this is Uro and gets forced, Edgar, I believe, is out of cantrips in the graveyard, but there is still a Lightning Bolt. And if the game progresses, force the Uro, swing in for 4 plus the Bolt, which is 7. Then the Delver is 1 short of lethal on the following turn if the Arcanist can be dealt with in some fashion or another. Ooh.
Wow.
Force pitching a redundant copy of Uro. And yeah, so we've been talking up the strength of Dreadhorde Arcanist, but you're just saying Uro is the card to bring you back. And now, this Rug Delver deck, as good as it is not really well equipped to deal with an Uro on the board, aside from the one main deck Pyroblast, right?
Yeah, I think in game 1 especially, we're going to see that this Uro is going to be kind of hard to get rid of. Just like 6/6, it's extremely overstated. Speaking way too fast here, because this is the one of the few ways that you can handle Uro pre-board here. Oko turning that 6/6 into a beautiful 3/3.
Right. Now and so what happens now? If Edgar attacks with the Arcanist, he can bolt down the Uro, but then he'll just come back. So yeah, it just becomes just a Delver attacking. And the scope of the game has changed. Now it's Delver racing, and both card advantage creatures are just sitting there. The Uro being disabled, and then the Arcanist just not wanting to tangle.
Yeah, this is going to be weird. I think now it's going to start coming down to clutch top decks from both players to see who can draw out of this situation first. You definitely want to see like an Abrupt Decay from the Snow side to handle the Oko. Sylvan Library, not that bad. Combines very nicely with Uro in its giant form, not so much with its elk form. But this attack here kind of makes sense, I think.
Maybe. There's a lot of damage coming back though. I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that attack, because now if the Bolt comes through, then the Delver is lethal next turn. Whoa! Okay, so you referenced that top decks are going to matter. I think you're already proven correct. Real quick, what are you blocking here?
I think I have to see pad the life total, block that Insectile Aberration, only because Edgar's graveyard isn't really stacked right now. I'm willing to take the risk here. Just going down to a life total where I might randomly get bolted out is not something I'm especially looking forward to.
Sure.
That being said, though, if there's a Lightning Bolt or a Chain Lightning drawn off the top, the game could also just end right there.
Yeah.
So.
But now with the Delver gone, the Sylvan Library might have more time to actually, provide enough selection to matter here. Even if Matti is unlikely to take an extra card, just having the choice can bring it back. Let's see. So we have a disabled Uro versus Arcanist and Oko. This game could end in a flash, like you're saying. It could actually last a while also.
Yeah, kind of tricky. I'm not even sure who's really favored, because looking at Edgar's hand, Daze and Oko kind of weak. Daze has certainly fallen off with 5 lands now in play on the Snow side of things, so you're not going to be able to really convert it for value unless your opponent starts casting multiple spells here. And a redundant Oko doesn't really work just by the Planeswalker Legend rule and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So really, it just depends on how good or bad Matti's hand is, whether or not they were able to find more answers One Dead of Winter has already been used, so the second one is, still somewhere in the deck, but there's only one copy left in the deck, right? So I think it's close.
Yeah, good draws here for Matti would include any more copies of Ice and Quaddle. Now, I wondered if this might happen. This attack actually potentially sets up lethal for Edgar with the redundant copy of Oko. Could actually make 2 Elks and swing in for 6.
Yeah, I guess maybe this attack signals that Matti feels a little bit under pressure here to get rid of the Oko, which means that we probably don't have another way of handling the Oko. So this could be something of a forced attack, which is, oh wow, okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's nice. That just picks off the Arcanist, I assume. Matti can read Edgar for not having a bolt in hand, because if there was, it would have come out before the Arcanist attacked. And this is just going to pick off the Arcanist for free.
Mm-hmm. Now, Hull Breacher does have a nice ability which says that if your opponent would try to draw cards outside of their draw step, the first card of their draw step, they don't get to draw those cards. But on this board state, it doesn't look like that's really happening here. The 3/2 going to block the 1/3 pretty well here. And one interesting choice is that with the daze in hand, Edgar had a real decision here whether or not to make that daze into a 1/1 to just keep the offense going. Chooses not to, which is, to me, kind of interesting, right?
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, trading a card for a 1/1 doesn't seem like a good deal, but when your opponent's at 2, yeah, there's certainly has to be given consideration. Matti does fetch, so only one card of the previous 3 on the Sylvan Library was desirable, and we'll get a new set to look at here on his draw step. But the Hull Breacher is going to shut down any future cantrips until it does get elked, which seems like a possibility.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, and that is a pretty clutch top deck there in Swords to Plowshares. And now Edgar going to pull the trigger here, fire off the daze. It's not going to be able to counter the Swords to Plowshares, but it will still make a 1/1, which, in some places is a 3/3, I guess. I don't know. Math is not my forte for sure. But this is the Hull Breacher coming in now.
And this is it. This is the game. Now the elk on the token representing another 3/3, and Edgar Magalhães will take down game 1 of this match. This game, which started out with Arcanist building up a lot of advantage, and then Matti really came to play and tried to mount a comeback there and came just a little bit shy.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you look at the turns too, right? Exactly turn 10. So moving to sideboarding here, it looks like Edgar has thought very clearly about this matchup, is pulling out a laundry list of cards, including Red Elemental Blast, very good against the blue decks, Surgical Extraction, very good against Oko. I'm going to talk about Sylvan Library first. I think that card is pretty good in this sort of like mid-range-esque, like basically Edgar's whole macro plan is to convert from the sort of tempo-oriented Delver deck into a much more slower, value-oriented mid-range deck. And all these cards that we're bringing in sort of contribute to that. Sylvan Library especially. Colossus is a pretty cool one.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at at Matti's sideboard as we see what Edgar's working with there. And we saw this play out multiple times in our last Legacy event, where post-board, the Colossus were just annihilating Snowco decks. And again, we see here that there's not really an answer for it, as there often isn't. But there are some cards to work with here that Matti Kuisma is likely to bring in. What do you like? Do you like Back to Basics here? There's one island in Edgar's deck, and Matti is aware of that.
Mm-hmm. I think I'd still bring in the Back to Basics. I do like being able to disrupt the opponent on that axis. Although I guess Colossus also does generate mana, so the efficiency of this card or the effectiveness of this card rather, is not as high as it historically has been. I really like bringing in the Assassin's Trophy and the Veil of Summers, and maybe we'll consider the Flusterstorms on the some in some form or fashion. Plague Engineer seems like a slam dunk though.
Is there any chance that Melee Mage comes in to name Colossus, since there's no way to get it off the board once it lands? Probably still not worth it?
Yeah, Probably not, because I mean you're going down a card in a value oriented matchup to prevent Colossus, and plus there's so many bolts and Pyroblast that if Edgar wanted to resolve Colossus, it would just probably likely happen.
And it's a card, and it would make your Dead of Winters weaker too, as just
sure.
another incentive to not cast it. Yeah, so I don't know. Matty's down a game here, and I don't feel like he's getting the better of it on sideboarding.
I agree with you. I think game one was very, very important for Matti to win. I mean, the mulligan to 6 was certainly unfortunate. One card may have been the difference to keep winning that game. Post board, it just seems like Edgar's got a lot of scary threats that will be difficult to interact with in the form of Klothys, in the form of Dreadhorde Arcanist, threats that must be answered unless they, draw a bunch of cards here. And yeah.
Yeah, so both players on 7 here for game 2, as Matti kicks things off with fetch for a Snookover Island and a Ponder. Edgar without a second land, but seems fairly safe in finding one on turn 2 with the array of cantrips in his hand.
Yeah, part of playing these blue decks is that sometimes you just have to believe that you're going to eventually draw into your lands, right? The way these decks are constructed is that with the cantrips, the math works out where you might be able to fire off a preordain on turn 2 and hit one of your 19-20 lands or so. I mean, there is going to be a fail rate sometimes, but generally speaking, mathematically, you are more likely than not to hit your second land on turn 2 with this sort of sequencing.
Also, without having the second land, there's maybe more incentive to use the days than there otherwise would be, because as it currently stands, Edgar's not actually missing a land drop if he bounces the Volcanic Island.
Yeah, that's a pretty astute observation here, right? Being able to get multiple uses out of this singular land here, as Misty Rainforest is going to come down from Matty's side, fetch, probably get a basic forest, nice, and a main phase Icefang Coatl is going to get punished by a daze.
Sure. So reasons to run this out main phase: preventing your opponent from getting to 2 mana, not getting it pyroblasted. Is there another one, or is that really kind of the primary ones? Because it's obviously you don't see everyday flash creatures played out before they need to be.
I think you nailed it on the spot right there. Those are the 2 main reasons why I would play it main phase. Pyroblast probably being the most important reason. Get my value where I can.
Okay, so we see Edgar does find the second land to play on his 3rd turn, as well as an Arcanist. Matti with a Ponder, so probably both players developing just fine here. The downside for Matti is he's losing a chunk of his life every turn.
Yeah, and this is just normally how this game will play out, especially when you have that turn 1 Delver that, can flip and do things. Cards that I'm interested in seeing from Matty's side, Swords to Plowshares, Abrupt Decay, and then also we need to be able to formulate a plan of our own in terms of, setting up our own economy and setting up our own card advantage generation. So I'd like to see somewhere along the lines that we draw into an Uro, gain some life, mitigate that Delver in some capacity, and then hopefully take over from there. That being said, Edgar's hand is looking pretty good right now.
It's looking very offensive. If Matti is able to defend himself with removal spells here, if Matti, for example, has 2 removal spells rolled up, then Edgar's going to find himself with not a whole lot going on. But until that is proven to be the case, yeah, another chunk of life, and with 2 bolts in hand, I mean, yeah, this is going fast. There's potential, if Matti has nothing, that there would actually be a lethal attack next turn. But Edgar is going to go a little bit slower, not run out the Arcanist, and get himself a little more set up to defend himself against spells.
Yeah, and check it out here. Ponder going to find Forcible, Misty Rainforest, Young Pyromancer. These are incredible cards here, giving Edgar the piece that, he's missing in this hand, which was that permission spell, and then, another resilient threat in the form of Young Pyromancer, which is really good in the matchup because it could just go so wide with so few resources committed.
So, Matti, the onus is on you. We need to find something here. 5 cards in hand, so plenty of resources available. What do we have to start dealing with the board? Here's an Uro. So
That's a good one.
This isn't going to solve any problems, but it's going to buffer the life total and continue to push the game further on. Gain a land drop, and there's ample cards in the graveyard to bring the Uro back next turn.
Okay, and it looks like the mana is also online here. Prismatic Vista and Flooded Strand both probably being able to get green sources in the form of a second forest or tropical island, which means now the game is suddenly going to pivot away from the damage dealing aspect of it. These lightning bolts are looking pretty good here. I wonder if Edgar is just considering maybe at some point to fire one off just to the face, say, hey, I need to close this game out, and then maybe use my Force of Will to slow you down just the right amount so that we can cross the finish line here with damage. But it certainly is going to be tricky for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the choice. Matty's turn is not over yet. I was going to say, those bolts definitely one bolt could go to the face, or they could be saved up to use to dispatch the Uro if that actually came down to it. And there is a Swords of Plashers, takes out Delver. Force not used to protect it. Edgar is more concerned about protecting his follow-up threats. As like you were saying, the Uro makes the damage race less important. So now the focus comes onto the card advantage creatures.
And Arkham's Astrolabe, one of the more controversial cards in the Legacy format, coming down now here, cycling to draw a card. I mean, if I'm in Edgar's spot, I don't feel too worried about the situation here. I think the way Edgar played it so far has been very good. We sort of played the Delver out as a lonesome threat here and dealt enough damage with it to apply enough pressure to make Matti feel forced to respond with the Swords to Plowshares, which now opens up the window for this clutch Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Mm-hmm. So for Matty's side this turn, there's Uro can be brought back. There are 4 cards in hand. What are we going to see? We're going to see Back to Basics.
Oh, wow. Now, this is a huge draw here. Is
this a must counter?
I think so, unless, well, yeah, I would feel reasonably pressured. And Edgar says, no, I don't care. Wow.
Yeah, so no counter there. I believe young Pyromancer are still on top of the deck, right? So if that's the case, Edgar's definitely be shuffling because drawing Pyromancer here isn't going to do any good.
Yep. You probably want to pick up a third copy of Volcanic Island.
Yeah, and then I think it's likely that Bolt has to be expended, and then Arcanist just uses the cantrips in the graveyard. So a number of the cards in hand are now dead, but Arcanist plus a Bolt to flashback might be enough. Ooh.
Bang, bang. And this is the reason why Edgar is not choosing to fight over the back to basics. The one basic island here looking very, very good.
Yeah, but stranding himself with the lightning bolts in hand is going to slow down. I mean, the cards are going to flow, but how useful are the cards when they can't be cast?
Yeah, that's a really solid point here, right? I think
that's actually, I was going to say, okay, Mana Source Run, but not the right color.
Maybe Edgar's forming a plan here, and the plan at this stage of the game is to find a second red, the last red source rather, and then also a copy of Pyroblast to take down the back to basics.
That surgical extraction is huge. That can. I would have said that Edgar was maybe facing some difficulty here, but this is going to really change the game.
Oh, wow.
And that is the perfect answer.
Force of Will.
Yeah. Force of Will plus 1 land to pay tax, not enough. The Uro sticks around, and now the Uro probably has to be forced, and Edgar is a little crimped on mana. And by little, I mean significantly.
Yeah. I wonder if Edgar should have waited until his opponent's turn here to cast the surgical extraction.
Sure.
One thing that I want to be a little bit cautious of, we do want to keep our eyes on the clock in terms of time. This has been a pretty long match here.
Right.
And Matti is getting a little bit low on time, down to about 7 minutes left.
Yeah. So Plague Engineer. Okay. Plague Engineer on Dreadhorde Arcanist will shut down its ability to cast 1 mana spells. And despite the 2 bolts in hand, cannot currently be removed. Engineer Plague, not the card we're looking for. It's actually Plague Engineer. But this game. Now we see, I would imagine the Uro coming back.
Yeah, this has been a rough sequence of events for Edgar, right? Because
Yeah.
that back to basics is not a card you really want to interact with, but you know, it just seems like given the board state, you're almost kind of forced to.
Yeah. And so now there was the option of Force of Willing the Uro, and again, no additional red source found. Force of Willing the Uro, and then Arcanist could have attacked, flashback the Surgical Extraction to remove the Uro, but with the Arcanist disabled, due to the sequencing from Matti here, this, you know what? This back to basics is going to win this game. This was an interesting development. I mean, Edgar had the choice to counter the back to basics, chose not to, thinking he could beat it on the board, and maybe not everything developed ideally the way he would have hoped for, but he's proven to be wrong. He was not able to. Now has the Pyroblast that can blow it up again if the red source is found, but Matti has really caught up in this game.
Yeah, and I would say even further than that. I think Matti is definitely in the driver's seat. And okay, there's the red source. This might be able to turn the game around.
What do you do here? There's Edgar. I mean, it's not. We're not at the level of, oh, I need to cast. He needs to cast 2 red spells this turn, but different ones. He can't, casting the same one twice using Arcanist is not good enough.
Yeah, it's gonna take multiple turns worth of casting spells here, and oh my goodness, are we actually going to go after the Uro here?
Well, so wait, so there's no more Volcanics in the deck, correct? So if the Pyroblast kills the Uro, then the back to basics cannot be removed because the Plague Engineer cannot be removed. So the back to basics is the only option here.
I agree with you.
Edgar doesn't have a choice, and now he's still, you know what? He's still stuck. The Plague Engineer can now not be killed.
Well, we can untap and fire off these bolts then.
Oh, because the back to basics is gone now. You're right. I'm sorry.
But the Swords to Plowshares probably was in the hand for a long time and is now.
Oh no!
Dang! All that work, all that effort, and we're gonna concede here and just go to the next game.
That was an entertaining game.
I really did think Edgar had a good shot at it, but this is what I was telling you, Joe. Like, Uro Titan in Nature's Wrath is the card that will close games out if it goes unchecked. I mean, Big Body draws a bunch of cards here.
Yeah, that was a fun game. So we see Edgar has removed half of his free counter magic, which that sounds about right to me, for bringing in his array of Pyroblasts and such. And the Flusterstorm really came up there, preserving the Uro in the graveyard. That really mattered. The back to basics did a ton of work, but you're right. The Uro was an important part of that. And the Plague Engineer really is a whole combination of cards, of non-synergistic cards from Matti that all synergize together to allow him to win that game.
Yeah. One question that I have for you, Joe, is given the impact of Uro in this matchup, how do you feel about boarding in a Crop Rotation and a Caracas, or maybe just the Caracas?
I mean, we have to, if we're going to do that, then we have to be able to be confident that we can beat our opponent just. I guess you only got, you know what? Okay, I can see it. I feel like the Colossus can help cover it. We have multiple outs to the Uro. If we're bringing in Crop Rotation Caracas, what do you want to get rid of?
That's a tougher question, and I'm going to leave that to Edgar to figure out. If Edgar, maybe like a Force of Will or something like that. Hard to say. Like, you could even shave like a Wasteland for the Caracas, and then like a Crop Rotation for a Force of Will. That would be my hypothesis. Actually, Edgar has submitted, so I'm supposing that Edgar is just going to keep this configuration.
Yeah, let's swing over back into Matty's deck list if the match doesn't start immediately. And we looked at, so we saw the combination of cards from the sideboard there. The Flusterstorm, Back to Basics, Plague Engineer, all mattered. And Hull Breacher is fine, but a lot of times Edgar's cantrips are going to be cast early, but it could have come in. And we got an update. So Matti does have a 2-minute extension. So he will actually time out at 13 minutes because the players are playing from 40 minutes down to 25 on the Magic Online clocks that you see on the side of the screen. So when Matti hits 13, he would time out, not 15. So he still has a decent amount of time. Not not a ton, but probably enough. And we see here Edgar starting out with 2 creatures on the board right away and an extra Arcanist in hand. So this is a nice setup.
Yeah, for sure here. A nice enough setup to make Matti play Brainstorm on the end step, which is usually not a play that you want to be making here. Brainstorm, one of the more powerful cards that can provide so much proper selection when you combine it with the fetch land that you really want to be, maximizing the value out of it here. But the pressure on the table right now seems so scary that, I could definitely see this sequence of events being correct.
Yeah, and we see the swords there before the Astrolabe, so the swords can't get dazed. We have a different scenario than we've had the other 2 games, though, where the Arcanist actually, if it had gotten to attack, it has nothing to do.
Yeah. So this is one of those situations where the threat itself isn't really scary, but the threat of the threat, if I may, is scary enough to merit the Swords to Plowshares, taking down the first Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Right, and we see, Edgar, aware that he has nothing to do with the Arcanist, actually just plays out the second Delver instead.
Yep. Hold up the Pyroblast. And what's interesting is that Delver of Secrets and Scalding Tarn, they work pretty well together, right?
They do. Barring a land Dead of Winter, which would be a nightmare for Edgar, you're right. The fetch land between the Delvers is a nice interaction.
Yeah. Delver of Secrets will reveal the top card to you. If you like it, you can reveal it and flip the Delver. If you don't, though, Scalding Tarn gives you the optionality in your upkeep to fetch it away and maybe draw a fresh card instead.
All right, you're going to see Playing Engineer. Oh, no, that's just as bad as that's even worse, arguably. The Delvers are down.
And look at that. Engineer is also on Wizard now, which means that Dreadhorde Arcanist, which was supposed to get Edgar like the backup threat afterwards, it does nothing.
And the Force of Will on the Ponder shuffled away because there's no additional blue cards and the problem's already on the table. This did not develop well for Mr. Magalhães, and
it really did not. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and Matti has 6 cards in hand. Brainstorm cast, when your opponent has that many cards, Pyroblast has to be preserved for something that matters, like a back to basics, even though at the moment it wouldn't be preventing Edgar from casting anything. But we have to be somewhat optimistic on our chances here. What would be a good draw for Edgar? Clothis would be something that would have ongoing impact, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Clothis would be pretty good here. I guess Lightning Bolt.
A Bolt. Okay, Pyromancer is not a wizard, so that can safely land on the board.
And the tokens are just elementals too, so I guess there's some sort of durability there, but...
Okay, and Swords just erases that from existence. Addy, not willing to go down here. Loses the first game and comes back with a vengeance, taking game 2 and in very good shape for game 3. Here's the front half of Uro. That's going to resolve.
This might be lights out. I mean, I was going to say that Matti might be approaching the point where even a simple ham sandwich would be enough to end the game here, but we might be doing it better with the Simic Titan instead.
Yeah, so we have a turn 6 attack to knock the players from their starting life totals. And, okay, a couple cantrips. There's a Bolt. That'll free up the Arcanist. This is a pretty significant turn here. Bolt with Pyroblast backup. This gets everything undone for Edgar.
Oh no. Man, and another Flusterstorm coming in so clutch here. Back-to-back games where Flusterstorm basically seals the deal here.
And both times it really was key that it was Flusterstorm. Flusterstorm used to be a card you play against Rug Delver to deal with the Stifle to guarantee your fetch lands would work. Now it's just finding the right time to pick off the must counter spells, and there's no backup to kill this Engineer. So Edgar's gonna have to find another Bolt or another removal spell.
I mean, this is just problem on top of problem on top of problem now.
Yeah, and the Pyroblast will be used to counter the Yoko, which will keep it in the graveyard for quite some time.
Oh, wow. There's a pause here.
There's a pause.
Force of Will?
Oh, there's a Force of Will. Force of Will pitching Brainstorm. Uro is going to be on the board. It's not over. A lightning bolt on the Plague Engineer would then allow the Arcanist to attack and Pyroblast the Uro. But that's not what we're seeing, and Edgar's days are numbered. This, I mean, you've mentioned several times on our shows that Uro existing and just being on the board and in combat, even if it doesn't end the game immediately, provides such a huge advantage. And another Swords just wipes out the Pyromancer. The young Pyromancers have been cast multiple times in this game and have been collectively on the board for about 2.5 seconds.
I really think so. I mean, I gotta tell you, Maddie, please, Edgar has got a family. Like this is just this is too much going on right now, and Edgar's gonna wrap it in too. I mean, I totally understand that. So
yeah. It's over. Matti Kuisma comes back from losing the first game and stomps on Edgar Magalhães in both sideboard games. Game 2 won on the back of an agglomeration of sideboard cards. Game 3, similar. Actually, I was going to say mostly it was just on the Uro, but no, the Flusterstorm and the
Plague Engineer.
Yeah, were carried a lot of weight. Plague Engineer wiping out. Effectively was a 3-for-1, killing 2 Delvers and locking down the Dreadhorde Arcanist. And normally, a creature with a benefit like that against a deck with removal like Delver, you'd think it wouldn't be reliable, but things lined up right, and the Flusterstorm takes down Lightning Bolt, and Matti Kuisma takes down Edgar Magalhães and to close out our round 3. So let's go ahead and look at the results that we've seen from across the tournament this round. Dominic Harvey goes down to a 4-color Snowco deck. Will Kruger wins again with his Rogue Delver deck. What else? Anything jump out at you here?
Yeah, so Gall Schlesinger on Temur Delver losing to 4-color Snowco. Yama Killer for any fans. And then I think I see Theodore Jung on Temur Delver, also 2-0, so that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's another Nathan Stewart. Same result as the match we just saw. Snowco beats Temur Delver 2-1.
Michael Bondi on Azorius Bomberman with the 2-0 win. Okay. And then looks like Golgari Depths at the hands of Topher Stetson wins against the Sultai Hogak list, so that's pretty good as well. Let's see. We see Casey from around.
Death and Taxes defeats Elves. John Ryan Hamilton taking down Adam Wallace. That's a matchup that historically has been very, very strong for Elves.
Wait, what? Wow. Okay, that is actually just insanely incredible because.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to somehow disagree with me and say
no. Like this is I'm saying because I'm so shocked because this seems like one of the rare fabled like 80-20 matchups in Legacy. Like I don't think there are that many of them, but Elves seems extremely favored in this matchup.
Yeah, one of the most famous examples of Death and Taxes actually winning the matchup was a number of years ago where Ross Merriam was attempting to go back-to-back in Star City Opens and had in the finals the matchup Elves versus Death and Taxes, and was on the favorable side of it and couldn't pull it out. But we see the result again here. Death and Taxes defeats Elves.
And then looking at the list down here, we have Atsuki Kihara taking an 0-2 loss to Yoshimura, who we saw. Actually, I think Yoshimura normally plays DNT and is very, very talented. Greg Dyer picking up the 2-0 with the Echo Stompy lister against Miranda Keith. See Devin O'Donnell on what I would imagine is the green-white Reclaimer deck, losing 0-2 against Matthew Vogt on the 4-color Snow list. And then, let's see, notably, I see Sam Dans on Infect taking the win against Espervile. Yeah,
so as the players work towards the end of round 3, we're back here with Anuraag and I. We've got one more round of Legacy to go before the players take their little break and switch up to Modern. Hope you're enjoying the day with us so far. We'll be back momentarily, and we'll see if we can find some players who are attempting to sweep the Legacy rounds. So we'll be right back.